Welcome to our educational podcast, Understanding Text in English. My name is Leo, and in today's episode, we'll dive deep into the world of grammar and exploring the fascinating topic of modal verbs. Specifically, we'll be discussing the imperative, modal verbs of obligation, advice, and prohibition. So, grab a cup of tea, sit back, and let's get started. Let's begin by exploring the imperative. The imperative is a verb form used to give commands, make requests, or offer advice. It is often used to express urgency or give direct instructions. The structure of the imperative is quite simple. It usually consists of the base form of the verb without any additional words or endings. For example, close the door or please be quiet. Now, let's move on to the modal verbs of obligation. These verbs are used to express necessity, duty, or obligation. Some common modal verbs of obligation include must, have to, and should. Must is used for strong obligations, while have to and should express milder obligations. To learn these modal verbs effectively, it is important to practice using them in context. Try creating sentences that reflect real-life situations to understand when and how to use them correctly. These are one of the important aspects in the English grammar. So, let's explore some uses and tips to learn them. The main modal verbs of obligations include must, have to, and should. Must is used to express strong obligation. It indicates that something is necessary or required. For example, you must submit your assignment by tomorrow. It can also be used to express deductions or speculation, but that is not its primary use of obligation. Have to is used to express both strong and general obligations. It indicates that something is necessary or required. For example, I have to attend a meeting. Unlike must, have to can also be used to talk about external obligations imposed by rules, laws, or other people. Should is used to express milder obligations or recommendations. It indicates that something is advisable or the right thing to do. For example, you should study for your exam. It can also be used to express regret about a past action that didn't happen. Tips to learn modal verbs of obligation. Learning modal verbs of obligation can be quite challenging, but with practice and exposure to different contexts, you can become proficient. Here are some tips to help you learn them effectively. Contextual practice. Use modal verbs of obligation in real-life situations to understand when and how to use them correctly. Create sentences that reflect everyday scenarios to reinforce your understanding. Conversations and discussions. Engage in conversations or discussions where you can use modal verbs of obligations. Discuss hypothetical scenarios with friends or colleagues, giving advice or expressing obligations. In reading and writing, you can read books, articles, or essays that use modal verbs of obligation. Pay attention to how they are used in different contexts and practice writing sentences or short paragraphs using these modal verbs to reinforce your understanding. In language exchange, you can find language partners or join language learning communities where you can practice using modal verbs of obligation in conversations. Now let's explore about the modal verbs. This of advice. These verbs are used to offer suggestions, recommendations, or advice. Common modal verbs or advice include should, ought to, and could. Should is the most commonly used modal verb for giving advice or making recommendations. It is used to tell someone what is the right or best thing to do in a certain situation. For example, you should eat healthy food. It can also be used to ask for advice, such as, what should I do? Off to. Off to is another modal verb of advice. It has a similar meaning to should, and it's often used in more formal contexts. For example, you off to play attention in class. Had better. Had better is a stronger form of advice, indicating that something is strongly recommended or advisable. It's often used to warn about potential negative consequences of the advice it is not followed. For example, you better not do that. Here you can find some tips to learn modal verbs or advice. It can be quite challenging, but we can do the following. Practice in context. Use modal verbs of advice in real-life situations to understand when and how to use them correctly. Create sentences that reflect different scenarios to reinforce your understanding. Differentiate between should and would. Should is used to talk about yourself, while would is used to talk about someone else. For example, I would study tonight if I were you. Or, you should study tonight. Did you notice the difference? Also, you can ask for advice. Practice asking for advice using modal verbs in real-life situations. For example, you can ask, what should I do? Or what would you do? Take advice exercises. Engage in exercises or quizzes that focus on using modal verbs of advice. This will help you reinforce your understanding and improve your usage. Remember, practice and exposure to different contexts are key to mastering modal verbs of advice. Finally, let's discuss modal verbs of prohibition. These verbs are used to forbid or prohibit certain actions. Some examples of modal verbs include must not, should not, and ought not to. These verbs help us to set boundaries and express what is not allowed. To master modal verbs of prohibition, it's important to understand the nuances of each verb and when to use them appropriately. Practice creating sentences that clearly convey what is prohibited or forbidden. Let's get some examples. Can't. Can is used to show that something is against the rules or not allowed. It indicates a strong prohibition. For example, you can't enter without a ticket, or you can't smoke in this area. Mustn't. Mustn't is also used to express prohibition. It indicates that something is not allowed or strongly advised against. For example, you mustn't touch the R word, or you mustn't use your phone during the exam. Not allowed to. Not allowed to is another way to express prohibition. It indicates that something is not permitted or prohibited. For example, you are not allowed to park in here, or you are not allowed to bring inside food in the theater. If you want to learn the modal verbs of prohibition, here are some tips. Practice in context. Use modal verbs of prohibition in real-life situations to understand when and how to use them correctly. Create sentences that reflect different scenarios to reinforce your understanding. Differentiate between can't and mustn't. Can't is used to describe something that is against the rules, while mustn't indicates a strong prohibition or advice against doing something. Another tip includes paying attention to rules and regulations. Get familiar yourself with rules and regulations in different contexts, such as public spaces, schools, or workplaces. This will help you understand when to use modal verbs appropriately. Reading and listening. Expose yourself to various texts, conversations, and situations where modal verbs are used. Pay attention to how native speakers use these modal verbs and try to incorporate them into your own language practice. Remember, practice and exposure to different contexts are key to mastering modal verbs of prohibition. By incorporating them into your conversations and reading exercises, will become more comfortable and proficiency in using them. Well, we come to an end. In this podcast, we'll discuss the imperatives, the modal verbs of obligation, advice, and prohibition. Also, we explore some structure and implications of their uses. We also briefly touch upon their in some tips to learn them. So remember to practice using them in various contexts so you can have a lot of chances for you to understand and improve your fluency in English. So that's all for today. See you!